Welcome to a very special edition of Nerd Initiative Variant Edition. My name is Ken M. You know me as the host of the ODPH podcast. I'm also Nerd Initiative editor-in-chief. To my left, your right on screen, he is the host of Wrestling Night Live every Thursday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Nerd Initiative YouTube. He is also a staff editor of the Nerd Initiative Bullpen Comics official home for reviews every Wednesday for New Comic Book Day. Please give a warm welcome to the one and only Rich.
It's always good to be in front of the mic talking about comic books, since usually when I'm talking about comics, it's behind the keyboard, whether it's producing or writing reviews. But I'm ecstatic to be here because we're mixing a bunch of my things: comic books, Bigfoot, and pro grappling.
Yes, you heard right. We are mixing the myth of Bigfoot with a squared circle and the ambiance of comics. And there's only one writer that can pull it off. You know his work from Vampiro, Rockabilly Apocalypse from Massive Publishing and Mass Republic. And he is returning to the show with a Kickstarter campaign that you absolutely have to jump on board with, because like we say, if you can get Bigfoot in the squared circle and watch him go to town and all the hijinks and adventures that come with it, you simply can't pass it as a comic book fan. Please welcome the writer of Friday Night Bigfoot, the one and only Michael Kingston, back to Nerd Initiative. Michael, what is going on?
How you doing? I just got back from GalaxyCon Columbus. It's been a hectic little month, but we're plugging away.
Yeah, and I mean, definitely. I mean, you've been putting a lot of work on the road, and we're seeing it on the social media accounts. And like we say, the campaign is live right now. We have the links in the Kickstarter in the liner notes of this episode, and it will be out on podcast form on the ODPH network very shortly as well. So I'll hand it over to Rich to kick things off.
Yeah, I was gonna say, definitely make sure you're joining the Kickstarter. I joined the Kickstarter like ASAP.
Yep.
Obviously, like I just said, it touches all of my favorite things. Plus, I'm enjoying Michael's work very muchly so. So therefore, that's another thing. And then on top of that, how can you deny getting a Bigfoot kayfabe shirt?
Yes.
Like, I mean, come on. Like you just got to join in. I got the stickers too, because why not? Once again, how can you deny any of this stuff? People, sell it. I'm already selling it. But speaking of the story, I know last time we talked to you when you kind of said that this was an idea coming up, and we were like, we definitely have to have you on to talk about this when it's time. You had brought up the fact that you and David Heath had done, also known as Gangrel, had done this little story for this for Tales from the Road, a book you had written a while ago, back in I think 2016. You said, how did this story come about, going to doing it at a larger scale for this Kickstarter with Friday Night Bigfoot?
So there's a whole lot of lore behind this. I had a whole bunch of stuff that the pandemic really kind of wiped out, and so we did the story. We did the short story. It was just a mini comic that we did for Pro Wrestling Crate Pro Wrestling Crate USA. They eventually merged with the regular Pro Wrestling Crate. They bought them out, I think. But that's where we started doing the initial Tales from the Road ones. We did the Hurricane story and Dijak and Mustafa Ali and bunch of cool little stories. But we did this one, and everybody liked it. And every time I would see Gangrel at a show or whatever, we would talk about it, be like, "Oh, we should do more. We should do more." And then in 2019, there was a upstart company called Comic Stream that was they had a bunch of investors. They were going to be doing some sort of like digital comic thing, and it was funny because they had all these like big A-list names signed up, and then me. And because I pitched them, they were talking about wanting to sort of leverage the wrestling audience, and I told them about Bigfoot, and then they were hooked on it. Um, and so we were going to do that, and they were going to pay us a really good amount of money to make this. And at the time, Josh Adams was going to draw it. Neil's son Josh, who I've done some stuff with before, and is a good friend. And then the pandemic hit, and they lost all their investors. And they're like, it's just such a stupid thing, because like, this is your moment, right? The shops are closed, right? Like, everybody's stuck at home. Like, here's your chance to do it. And it just, they lost all their investors, and it kind of just went by the wayside. And then so then I did. That's when I started to do Tales from the Road. It's my artist on Headlock. Mikkel had gotten a Disney gig, and he needed some time. So I was like, well, maybe I can. We were doing these bonus Kickstarter stories, and we had the Wrestling Crate stories. So I was like, let's do let's just do a compilation book. And then, so we put it in there, and then a whole new generation of people found it. And but we just always wanted to do more. And that time is now. I'm very excited to make this thing happen. It's like I said, we've been talking about it, just kicking around ideas for years. So the stuff I could probably write like a whole like red band version that we couldn't publish with some of the hijinks that have been proposed. But yeah, I don't know. It's a lot of fun, and I think that people are going to enjoy it.
Yeah, I definitely think so. Just going off the little snippets I've read of it, and especially going back to the story nearly after a decade, like when this really started taking hold, like what was that moment that was like, okay, we're really going back to this, and we're gonna go do this. Like just talking with the fellow creators about this.
Um, I mean, when the comic stream thing came up, like that sort of reinvigorated it, and like we were supposed to announce it at New York, and then they held off, and then it was the New York right before the pandemic. It was 2019, and I had Dave at the booth, and we were gonna do a panel and talk about it and all that. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of just been an ongoing thing. Like it's just always been there, like just right in the periphery of my brain.
Mm.
So I mean, I have I was doing the crate books for Pro Wrestling Crate, and that's like those have hard deadlines. So like that sort of took over for a little bit, um, and then I finally one of the things that happened for me, I think, is my job changed from I have a full time job still, but it's remote, and it allows me to do more stuff. And then that for a long time it was just putting out one trade a year,
Mhm.
and I had enough time to get it made and then do shows and promote it. But now I can do a little bit more, and I can try to expand. So I was like, all right, let's get some stuff done. And Vampiro was something else that the genesis of that started in the pandemic. So it was interesting because I lost a lot of stuff during the pandemic. Tom DeWin just posted yesterday. We were supposed to do this prequel for that cage fighter movie that John Moxley was a star in, and I got
Oh,
hired to write this. And they asked me to write. Well, they asked me to write a tie-in, and I wrote a prequel because John Moxley's character in that was kind of stole the movie because he had so much personality. And so I decided to make like an origin story for him that preceded Cage Fighter, and everybody loved it. And the idea was if that had done well during the pandemic, it would have been, or if it had done well, they would have like licensed it for and made it a movie, the sequel. And the pandemic killed the theatrical release and all that. So it's funny, like I lost a lot of stuff during the pandemic, but then like the seeds of what we're doing now sort of started in the pandemic. So it's interesting, I guess. But
yeah. I
Tom
mean,
had posted some of that art on his Facebook page yesterday, and I'd never even seen it. I'd seen like 2 or 3 pieces of it, but I really brought back some memories.
yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, just to think about like coming back from the pandemic and like now is the time to do it and just kind of reliving those moments too. Because to keep an idea like that fresh and going and just like with everything going on, and then now is the time to really bring it back. Because I mean, we're seeing Kickstarter is really taking a hold of for comic readers to get involved in and doing a project like this, especially too. It's one that stands out, and just to keep that energy going too. Because I think a lot of times, like when you're creating something, it's just you know ideas pop in and go, but for something like this to stick out, I mean, that's gotta be something truly special.
Well, and I think that's why I try to make fun books,
Yeah.
because obviously they're fun to think about. You know what I mean? It's not work per se. I mean, it's work obviously, but like it's not as much. So I try to, I don't know. I try to keep my stuff fun and light and whatever. And I think that makes it easier to hold on to them and to work on them and come back to them if I need to. So
Speaking of fun, Bigfoot is a fun character. And I mean, Bigfoot has done a lot. He's been in a lot. I mean, when I grew up, you had Harry and the Hendersons. I mean, previous to that, you've had a ton of different situations. How you could even argue, I know it was more of a gorilla costume, but you could even argue the legendary Trading Places scene where you had the real gorilla and the guy dressed up. It's always been like a fun thing. However, you have an interesting take here, and more specifically, when you start this story off, Bigfoot starts off in rehab. So I feel like that's the first time Bigfoot's ever been in rehab. So what was the decision to start there?
It just came up at some point with it was just something that, whenever I was around David shows, we would just kick ideas back and forth. And I don't even remember how it started, but that's where, we're like, oh man, what if Bigfoot had to do DDP yoga? And that's how we started. I mean, Bigfoot's in rehab doing yoga, and then he sort of goes back and tells the story of what happened. But yeah, I mean, it's the '80s, so you gotta get Coke involved. I mean, and so it's fun to sort of put him through all the sort of '80s tropes and a lot of the territory stuff, because I mean the territories are fascinating, and everybody, like, it's such a unique time, and it'll never be replicated. I mean,
No. Yeah.
I mean, I remember doing a doing a panel with a famous '80s wrestler, and he was talking about having to move because, like, all these girls were looking for him. I mean, you just can't get away with that now. You know what I mean? Like, you can't. All the dirt is, they put the light on it. So it's a very different time, and I think it's just that's the nature of that sort of Wild West time. Is a fun time to explore, and it's a fun time to because literally anything can happen. You just don't know, right? Like, I mean, when you hear about the old wrestling stories, right? Like Sid coming back with a squeegee to fight Brian Pillman, or Arn and Sid and scissors or whatever.
Yeah.
Just I mean, there's just so many crazy things that happen that just you couldn't make it up, right? So, like, it's a fun place to set it. And I also think the idea of, like, WWE sort of took over wrestling by promoting spectacle.
Mhm.
And I mean, what's more of a spectacle than Bigfoot, you know? But they would do it on a smaller scale too, like when you saw like how they would introduce Kamala in Memphis and stuff like that. I mean, it was just the Indies had they used spectacle. They just didn't have the resources to do, enormous spectacle, I guess, but they were still doing it. So, and I mean, Bigfoot would be the biggest spectacle around. So it's a fun thing to toy with. And I love just the idea of family dynamics and stuff. I'm an only child to a single mother, so I don't know, the stuff like that always is always drawn. I'm always drawn to it. So um, I think there's a lot of different sort of themes and things going at it, but I mean, at the end of the day, like I said, it's the same thing with Vampiro. It's just a fun thing.
Listen, there's no problems with having fun, and trust me, I've heard plenty of '80s legends tell some pretty hectic stories
Yeah.
that I. So you never have to. There's always going to be a well for that. It's impressive when you hear some of the stories, and you're just like, okay.
And especially this one will be one of those legendary '80s stories, because where the story is set, it's the 1980s in Portland, and a wrestling family needs to have Bigfoot come and save the promotion. What else can you tell us about this story of Friday Night Bigfoot?
So it's a family. The family runs the promotion. Um, there's three brothers. The oldest brother is the champion. The middle brother is the promoter. Is the father is passed on, and the youngest is sort of like the hot up and coming baby face. And since the father passed, it's just not the company's not doing as well. And then obviously you have this sort of big national juggernaut coming in. Um, it's called the American Titans of Wrestling. It's not being super subtle. And and so, like, people, it's pulling off of the fans, and then it's just a different, so, but it's their whole family's life, so they kind of have to figure it out. And then the son Andrew Stanton is just, his dad never really shared anything with him. He died sort of unexpectedly, so it's not like he trained him to replace him, but he's the only one that can do it. And then you have like an outlaw promotion that's forming because there's people that are upset that the family always seems to control the belt. And then you have drugs coming into Portland in that time, and there's a lot of different you know, he's got pressure sort of from all sides, and then in that they sort of are dealt a sort of catastrophic blow, and then he has to figure something out, and circumstances will lead him to Bigfoot,
I mean,
and
hey,
hilarity ensues.
Yeah, I was gonna say because I mean the premise is an old school wrestling fan. Like you tie in a lot of that history, and for new fans that we jump in about hearing about territories and such, like that's gonna be something. The easiest way they can relate it to, I guess, these days would be WWE and AEW to a very, lesser extent. But
And
in this situation, like I say, this is just a fun story, and just to kind of see like the outrageousness of a character such as Bigfoot too. Because I mean, taking a myth like this and really going a 180 with this, I mean, it really is one of the beauties of comics because you really flex your creativity with this.
I mean, I've always been fascinated by the territories, and I've always been fascinated by Portland because Portland and Memphis were the last two territories. And Memphis because of Jerry, and Portland because of the Athletic Commission to a degree. But Portland had just such a unique promotion, and it just had like this sort of, I don't know, vibe that no one else had, and so there's a lot of Easter eggs from Portland, from Memphis, just from stuff that I've seen and whatever, just because I like everything to be authentic. I mean, as uh, as unconventional, obviously, as putting Bigfoot into the story. I mean, I still want everything else around it to feel real. And that's always been important to me too. Like you got to make sure you get the details right and stuff. And I mean, I get sometimes you want to bend a little bit for the sake of the story, but I mean, I kind of want it to feel. I want it to feel like it felt in the 80s. And you're in a territory, maybe that territory is starting to die, and fingers are getting pointed, and it's there's just a lot of whatever. And then you got the big glossy, larger than life crew coming in, and what do you do? So, and then there's a lot of other aspects that'll be developed in future issues. I've got a lot of fun and weird stuff set for it. So yeah, I don't know. It's gonna be good. I just think that I think anybody who grew up in the 80s will love it. I mean, if you like Bigfoot, if you like wrestling, I think there's a little something for everybody.
yeah, the wrestling historian in me just kind of, when you're talking about Portland, of course, famously promoted by Don Owens, who is famous for giving Roddy Piper his first break in the business. So much so that Piper would not work Portland or anywhere in Oregon for that matter, for WWF when he was there. So
And,
that was a lot of respect there because of that territory.
and I feel like Portland, for whatever reason, had the largest. Portland and Memphis was like this too. They had the largest quantity of like unique characters that didn't really go anywhere else, but were super big stars in that area. And I
Mhm.
love that idea, that sort of regional. There's almost nobody that does that anymore, right? Like because everybody's sort of playing to the internet. I mean, the one guy I can think of is in Wildcat, is it Danny Flamingo?
Oh
And
yeah.
he's from Chalmette, which is a part of Louisiana, and he plays that up. And I don't know if there's anybody else that does that anymore. And I think that's fascinating. Like I think it's cool. But yeah, so like I don't know, there's just lots of fun things to explore, and there's a lot of Tony's a big wrestling fan. Tony Gregori, who's doing the art, he's just finished up a stint on Rick and Morty for IDW, and then he likes to he's made some analog characters that feel very familiar. And it's not they're not necessarily they're not the people that you think they are, but it's
Mhm.
just like trying to give people a little bit of comfort when they pull up, so we can we can make it weird for them.
Yeah.
Seriously. Speaking of the Kickstarter, you've mostly done like OGNs for your campaigns for your Kickstarter. This one obviously is an ongoing series, so expect a lot more. Hopefully, like get the books, folks, because
Yes.
we want to see a lot more of this, and trust me, you're going to want to see a lot more of this as well. What made you make the decision to do it as an ongoing series?
I guess like I want to make more books, and trades take a long time and they take a lot of money. When I first started doing Kickstarter, I would hit the Kickstarter and then we'd deliver the book like a year later because it would take us a year to make it. And so now I'm trying to do more, I'm trying to turn the turnaround time down a little bit.
Mm.
So, I was trying to alternate big projects and little projects, and I had a bunch of sort of behind the scenes that we had a project that got squashed by WWE, that I'm hoping to go back to at some point. But I was trying to find a nice sort of alternate between like sort of smaller projects with trades, and so then like while I'm running this Kickstarter, I'm working on the trade, we're getting it ready, and then we can do the Kickstarter for the trade, and then while we're doing that, we're got this single issue. So um, we're supposed to lead with that sort of the WWE project as a single issue that would have been really high profile, and then do a trade, and then do this, and things got all kind of out of whack. It's sort of the nature of me sort of playing on a field that I probably don't belong on, but they've never been able to kick me out. I'm just dealing with I'm just dealing with these, big corporations, big
Mm.
brands, whatever. I mean, in a way, right? Like I'm Portland wrestling, but you're dealing with uh, all these big things, and people just make decisions, and they're not thinking about me or whatever. They're just like, oh, we're just going to do this because it's best for us, and then it's catastrophic to me. So that part of it's always tricky. So, but yeah, so I guess the short answer is I'm trying to stagger, big and small projects. So after this, we'll probably do either Tales from the Road Volume 4 or Headlock Volume 5, and then I'll do another small, maybe we'll do the next issue of this. So also I have permission from Kickstarter to run multiple campaigns, just as long as I don't do more than I think 5 or something. So, which I couldn't even imagine. I mean, I
Oh my
can
God.
barely
Yeah.
handle. I gained like 10 pounds of stress weight in every one Kickstarter. I couldn't imagine if I had 5 going. It would
Oh, geez,
just be an endless cycle of anxiety. But I don't know. I'm always, in between writing projects, I'm always trying to figure out ways to sort of secure my production and stuff and whatever. So like I'm always like, I don't know, there's always stuff on the back burner. There's always stuff we're considering, or there's always conversations being had, where people are like, who is this fucking guy?
Yeah.
I'm about to announce another project that should come out soon that WWE did not squash. Um, but
Hmm.
it will be with a WWE talent. So for charity, and that's actually having that call in 2 days. But to my understanding, it's been approved. So hopefully that'll be coming out soon. But yeah, it's it's a wild life, Like one day you're writing about Bigfoot, and one day you're talking with Danny Trejo about Vampiro, and then people are like, "Hey, we're gonna make a TV series out of this," and I'm like, "Oh, I'm doing this book with a WWE guy." And I don't know. I just try to keep my head above water the best I can, and try to sleep enough to not die.
Yeah. Definitely good. Definitely hear that. Like I say, because you're always hustling, you're always got great stuff coming out to you. And like I say, we can't stress enough about this campaign, and especially going into Kickstarters. And I always ask this about creators that are going through Kickstarter. When you're approaching a project like this, and there's a lot of cool incentives with this. I know the logo T-shirt is one, the tumbler, which I mean, I got that one as well. When you're going into this, especially with a project like the 80s set Bigfoot, is there anything that you wanted to do, or like you're thinking like, this is what truly represents a book, like I have to offer this, or what else can you really tell us about this campaign that you think the consumer should really hone in on?
I mean, honestly, I think the shirt is probably one of the single coolest things I've ever made. And I love it. I haven't carried T-shirts in a long time. Like I've made a variety of headlock shirts over the years, and when I only had one book, they were a nice sort of thing that people could, you could sort of up your sale total. you know, when I just had a single floppy, you know, and every sale is $3 to $5, right? Like it's nice to be like, oh yeah, we have this $15 t-shirt, and then now you're, you know, you're doing more. But now it's so hard because I have so many books and I can barely bring the amount of books that I want. And then we've got the prints and we've got autographs. You know, and I just every time a new issue of Vampiro comes out with 2 more variants or whatever, like it just takes up another chunk of space in my luggage, and then something else has to come out. So it's tricky. It's very, very difficult to, because I have a lot of stuff. We've made a lot of cool stuff over the years. But yeah, so I might actually carry the shirts for a little while because I feel like they're going to do good. But yeah, so the shirts are great, the tumblers are great. Like I try not to have too much stuff, but I try to have like, I want you to be able to get it all and not have it be super, super onerous. Like, you know, the metal covers are a little more expensive and they're collectible and whatever. And that's fine. That's like I must consider that like a separate thing. But like I want it to be able, you can get the book, you can get the shirt, you get the tumbler and you know, and the stickers or whatever, and still not have it be gross. And that helps us obviously, because if all I'm selling is, you know, $5 to $10 comics, then it's a lot of sales you got to make. So
Yeah.
it helps you make up some ground, you know, financially too. So, but like I would never make anything just to make it. You know what I mean? Everything has to be right. Like it's got to be cool. Like it's got to hit me in the right way. Like I don't hack anything out. Like, so and I see it. Like I was looking at a Kickstarter campaign today that's about to fund, but it's been a struggle for the creator. And I mean, the only tiers they have to offer are like single digit tiers now. And like, you know, sure, you only got a couple $100, but I mean, you're going to need like, you know, unless you have somebody that's going to pay $100 for a digital comic, like, or people are just, you know, handing you like bonus money. I mean, that's a tough sled. So, I mean, I feel like you gotta, you know, and I've been super, super blessed to have a lot of people who believe in me and have consistently backed me in a large dollar value where they'll get everything. And that helps out a lot. It really does. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, as much as everything is difficult, I've been super, super lucky too.
Definitely. And once again, I obviously, I said before in the beginning, I backed the one with the shirt because the shirt is one of the coolest things I've seen. As far as like, you mix my love of like Bigfoot and wrestling, and I'm like, okay, that's got to be an instant grab. And I agree with you. For price wise, not bad at all.
No, absolutely
what I
not.
It's not a
mean?
shitty shirt. It's a Comfort Colors shirt, which are
Mhm.
super, super nice and durable and like printed well. Like I don't want to sell people garbage. Like I want people, you know, we're all here to have a good time, right?
Mhm.
So, I mean, I just want people to have cool stuff, and you know, I just want to make my books.
As somebody who spent some time doing screen printing, that being me, one of my selling points to my wife, when she was like, "Did you really need another shirt?" I was like, "Well, A, look at this. Yes. B, it's on Comfort Colors."
Seriously, if somebody tells me their shirt's on Comfort Colors, like it's an immediate, like I'm not gonna say it's an immediate buy, but it's definitely immediate consideration.
It moves
Right?
up the ladder quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If
I
you don't
would
own
buy
any
a
Comfort
shirt.
Colors, yeah.
I would buy a design I was less enthused about on a Comfort Colors shirt than buy a better design on a shittier shirt.
Oh, absolutely. Once again, if you don't own any Comfort Color shirts, you should go out and get some. They're
I have
amazing.
a Brody King God's Hate shirt that I wear a lot, and then Lauren Moran made me, or she didn't make it for me, but she made a VMA Chapel Roan shirt, and I have that now too. And they are so unbelievably comfortable. And like comfort is important to me. Like shows are rough, man. You're on your feet. Like I don't sit at shows, I stand. You know, I might sit the last hour, but like I usually try to stand and engage people, and I'm walking around and talking to people and stuff. So like it's you're, you know, you're reaching under the table to get people's books and prints, whatever. So like comfort is important. It's super, super important, especially when you're at a show. Because if you're having a bad show and you're uncomfortable, like then it's just like
Yeah, that's
it's like a multiplier, like an exponential multiplier.
I was gonna say, we every time I saw you walking around New York Comic Con, and even when we stopped and saw you, were always on the go. So he definitely does not sit down.
No,
Definitely
definitely
does
not.
not.
Well,
And
I
we
mean,
even
I
bumped
think
into
people
you at a
believe,
party after too.
I think people deserve that. Like, if you're coming, I mean, I'm trying to get you to, I mean, money's tight, right? Like, I'm trying to
Mhm.
get you to spend your money on my thing. Like, I feel like the least I could do is give you my best. Like,
Mhm.
I see old comics guys at shows all the time. They're just sitting there. They just put their stuff on the table and just sit there, like, sit back, like, I don't know. And then they wonder why, like, they're like, all these shows aren't for comics anymore. I'm like, I don't know. Maybe you're just not selling yourself. I think they'd like, oh, well, you know what I've done? But like, there's a lot of people there that don't know what you've done.
Yeah, but that's one thing too in this day and age is like there's so many books out and so many characters and so many creators, and especially making that connection now, especially in a digital age, is tough. But it's that one-on-one experience that still remains true, and like that's the one biggest selling point. Like when you go to cons and you're talking to fans and you're engaging, and it's like the same thing when we go to a comic shop on a Wednesday and go talk to fans in the shop and just like just having that interaction, like that's where it builds up, where it rolls into campaigns like this. I mean, it's one of the most important things of doing comics is making that connection with the audience and especially giving them something worthwhile, because like you touched upon, this is not a cheap I would say a product,
Mm.
with how books have gone up over the course of the years. So you
Sure.
want to make sure you're giving the fans their money's worth and then some.
Yeah. I mean, there's a million things you can do for free.
Mhm.
And, you can watch cat videos on YouTube all day long. I mean, you can play Fortnite, like there's all kinds of stuff that you can do for free to occupy your entire day and never spend a dime. And, so I mean, I take that very seriously. I've always taken it very seriously as a person who's gone to conventions and as a person who tables at conventions. Like, I don't know. I think if somebody comes to the booth and you're giving them a negative interaction, like you're already on the back foot.
Mhm.
And I mean, I don't like to do that in life, but so it's not like it's just a sales technique. I work in like blue collar industries my whole life,
Mm.
and I'm a science major and I played football. Like I have a biochemistry degree. Like I've spent a lot of time not around my people. When I'm at Comic Con, like I know I'm around my people, right? Like there's the people that are coming to my booth, I know are wrestling fans because they're gonna see my setup, and or maybe I have Jerry Lawler with me or whatever, and they're coming because they're wrestling fans. So I know right away that these are my people, right? So like, and I don't even mean customers. I just mean like kindred spirits, and that we love the
Mhm.
same thing. And so like, I'm automatically enthused just because as a kid, when I was younger, I lived through the Hogan and the Austin eras, and even though wrestling was popular, it still wasn't cool.
Yeah.
I mean, like when I was in college, like Raw used to run against Melrose Place, and would get down to the lounge to start Raw to get there ahead of the Melrose people, and they get mad at us. But hey, what are you gonna do? Bret Hart's fighting tonight. We got to see that. Um, but you know what I mean. So like, I mean, wrestling's never been more mainstream and accepted than it is, and that's cool. But like, I went through 2/3 of my life being treated like a pariah because
Mhm.
I like to watch oiled up hairless men pretend to hit each other.
Yeah. I've said that to so many people in so
Mhm.
many ways. It's like looking at things now and where we are with comic book movies and the nerdums and all of the like in wrestling and everything. I'm like, I'm a comic book. I've read comic books my whole life. I've watched pro wrestling my whole life. I'm a big Star Wars fan. Like all these nerdy things did not make you cool.
Yeah.
Mind you, much like you, I played football and and did a lot of cool things. But like even my friends, they'd be like, "So what are you doing on Monday night?" And you're like, I'm watching Raw," and they're like, "Why are you watching
Mhm.
wrestling?"
Yeah.
It was never like even when it was popular, those same people would possibly be wearing a DX or NWO shirt, but you wouldn't catch them dead watching the show.
Right.
They
Sure,
just started
sure.
it because it was cool.
Yeah.
Right.
So like now when we're a little more accepting of the fandoms, especially like nerd culture is taking over with whatever thank you comic book movies have
Yeah.
kind of helped it take over.
Geek culture is pop culture.
Yeah.
As shitty as it is, The Big Bang Theory really had a lot to do with it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
it
and it
was
was
oh, go, I'm sorry.
no, I was gonna say it really was sort of derisive towards nerd culture in a lot of ways too. But like, it's so funny. Like, so many like older people, they'd be like, "Oh, you write comic books?" Like on The Big Bang Theory, and like that was their sort of entry, and that's what you need, right? Like people like as much as that show was mean to nerds, like it was also great in the same way that a lot of people don't give Total Divas credit for making a ton of wrestling fans.
Mm-hmm.
Um, everybody needs their entree, and sometimes you won't come in through the front door because the front door's got wrestling on it. But you know what I mean? If you come in through, maybe you're going to come in through the side door of reality show or whatever, So it's, I don't know. It's interesting times for sure.
I've always said the same thing. Total Divas brought in an audience. Ms. and Mrs. brought in an
Mm-hmm.
audience. You want to normally watch wrestling, but I'll watch this because this is entertaining. And then somehow that crosses over. When you have the biggest movie star in the world being The Rock, at
Mm-hmm.
some point juncture that crosses over. Although it was kind of interesting his heel move, but still, it
Yeah.
still worked because he's The Rock.
As interesting that like there's a very distinct like the people that are on Twitter and like sort of dominate the conversation are hardcore fans.
Mhm.
Mm.
But like when I go to cons, there's a ton of casual fans, right? And like there's always the everybody argues about the Bellas and their sort of Hall of Fame credit, but like I've seen to this day, I still see tons of girls dressed like Nikki Bella, and you
Mhm.
wouldn't see that at a wrestling show. You know what I mean? They wouldn't go to WWE dressed like that, but they go to Comic Con dressed like that. You know what I mean? Like tons of people, tons of girls tell me how much they love watching the Bella show, and then it was their gateway drug. So, I mean, I don't know. There's a whole side to the business that people don't ever see. Like when everybody was kind of, before the tribal chief, but when everybody was kind of shitting on Roman, like I would see tons of little kids in Roman Reigns shirts at shows. But, they're not on Twitter and arguing, so then people think that they don't exist. And
Mm-hmm.
Well, it
there's
was the
sort of
main
a
reason why John Cena never turned heel.
yeah.
Because there was a lot of people buying a lot of merch.
Yeah.
And people were like, "Well, that's just terrible." Well, that's not what the kids think,
Yeah.
and that's who's driving the bus, and that's
And-
fine. That's how it works.
Right. It's a business, right? Like dollars drive everything, which is why it's kind of insane that, Danhausen isn't on TV, but that's a
Yes.
separate argument.
Oh,
I was
yeah.
going to say we could sit here and get in. Speaking of which, I will hijack it for a minute because obviously we have talked a little pro wrestling, but I know you've been super busy. What have you been paying attention to recently in pro wrestling? Are you watching some older stuff, watching stuff that's on now? What's tickling your fancy in the pro wrestling world?
I mean, I think right now, I think WWE is killing on all cylinders. I mean, I think there's just a ton of guys that are over that have found their voices. Like, like I never really cared for Drew McIntyre. Like, I could see why people liked him, but like for me, like there was nothing to him as a person, and he's fleshed himself out so much in the last year. Like, super compelling now. Like one of my favorite things to watch. Because I think it's not necessarily. I don't want to say it's not hard to wrestle, but I mean everybody's kind of doing good work right now. Like,
Mhm.
right now, any match that you have on TV would have been 5 stars in 1995, right? Like,
Yeah.
it is what and it's a blessing, right? But like, what makes things compelling is the characters, and so like, I just think that WWE has done a fantastic job of fleshing out all the characters around the bloodline and the characters that are around them, and that sort of just worked its way out into stuff. Kevin Owens is super super compelling right now. Like there's a world where I'm like, man, wouldn't it be dope if Kevin Owens was right and they find like video of Cody being just a dickhead or something, and then like they do the double turn. Like the double turn is like the thing, right? Everybody wants that, and to me, like it's such a hard thing to pull off. And Brett and Austin obviously did it seamlessly. And I feel like everybody's been chasing that high ever since. And I don't think anybody's ever really got there. I think some people have come close, but I don't think anybody's ever made it like that effective. But there's part of me that's like, man, wouldn't that be cool if they were able to do it? Kevin Owens was right or whatever, and like Cody and Randy form some sort of heel four horsemen or something, with spears and I don't know, Ricky Starks.
That good.
I'm there for that.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah. So there's, I mean, but yeah, WWE's good. I mean, AEW, they're week to week sometimes can be a little dicey, but I mean, the pay-per-views always deliver. The guys, I mean, you're never going to see a bad match on the show. So, and I mean, coming from what I grew up in, I mean, I feel like people are, it always makes me laugh when people criticize like MCU movies or whatever. I'm like, bro, you didn't see the Italian Red Skull. Like, you weren't there for that. Like, yeah. So like, and that's kind of I feel about, people criticizing AEW. Be like, well, I did grow up during Men on a Mission. So, I mean, I think it's good. I think TNA's found a nice little thing, and and I know almost everybody just from doing this for so long and being at so many shows and stuff. And I mean, we've had almost everybody at our booth at some point or another. So I just want everybody to do well. I want everybody to be safe. It's funny that like wrestling's kind of real again for me in some ways, just because when I'm watching my friends wrestle, I'm like, oh, geez, Christopher Daniels, one of the OG headlock supporters, and I just saw him this weekend in Columbus, which always makes me happy. But like, every time I watch him wrestle, I mean, I know, he's not he's not a young guy, and he's got a lot of miles on him. He's in ladder matches with the Young Bucks and stuff, and it makes you nervous a little bit. They're professionals, but shit can happen, and you're like, eh. So like in a way, I remember I was sitting next to the Briscoes' father at an ROH show one time, and he's losing his mind about everything, and the mom was sort of watching it through her hands, and I was like, yeah, wrestling's real for them, It's kind of like that for me too, which I like. I want my friends to win because I know it's better for their careers. So
I'm with you. There's definitely a thing where I've had that, especially because a lot of the guys that I had the pleasure of working with that were on the indies have now gone on to be, big stars in wrestling. So it's kind of cool to see them win and not, back, and this will throw something back that we're both familiar with, but Kevin Steen was 2CW champion for a while. And now to see Kevin Owens over the last, decade plus in WWE be like a main star for that company. When, there was a time where somebody who, let's be honest, who looked like Kevin Owens would not be a main star in WWE. It shows, how far A, the business has come, and B, how much, all of us who have been watching him forever, knew that he had something, because he had enough of something that he overcame a huge disadvantage because of the stereotypical wrestler look.
I also think that you get over.
Yeah.
And I think that, if you can get over, I mean, there's a lot of times where people are like, oh, this person's underutilized or this person's underutilized, and they go to another company and they don't do any better. Right. So were they, right? Like I don't even want to name somebody, but like,
I was gonna say, you're probably thinking of Miro.
But yeah, there's a guy, right? With Keith Lee or whatever, right? Like, and was he underutilized because he didn't really do any better? You know what I mean? Like, or is he just, is that person booked bad everywhere? Like, I mean, the one argument I think you can make is Cardona for sure. Just I mean, I feel like for whatever reason, they just actively did not want to, give him what he had earned. But I think for the most part, if you get over, you get over, right? They tried to give Dusty Rhodes polka dots, and he got it over because he's Dusty Rhodes, and same with with Steen and Generico, right? They main evented WrestleMania. I mean, that's still wild to me, And I mean, I know those guys forever, and it blows my mind, but it's too many people wait. You can't wait for your time in wrestling. Like, you got to take it. Look at somebody like Chelsea Green, right? She steals every scene that she's in, and she's not winning matches or whatever. But you notice her. She stands out. She's got a personality. Like, she makes the most of everything that she's in. And at some point, she's gonna get a run with the belt because she's too good to be denied.
Yeah.
Like, and that's it, right? Like, you just gotta. you got to make the most of the time that you get, because and there's just some guys that are just sitting there waiting to get pushed, and those guys are the old guys at the Comic-Con sitting there, being like, why aren't people coming to my table? Don't they know who I am?
Oh, I agree. I was spinning back just 1 second for something you said earlier that resonated. I always famously told people, and mind you, I know it's how much athleticism it takes, but I always was always famously telling guys when they would ask, well, what could I do better? When you're asking, somebody in the back, and I
Mhm.
would always say, everybody can do the moves. It's it's your character. It's your gimmick. It's how you perform. It's how you do them. Hence why I agree with you. Danhausen is a money machine because he has a gimmick. We've talked about it. Orange Cassidy. There's a reason why he just main evented a pay-per-view with John Moxley.
Yep.
Is because he's over. And it's not because he can't wrestle, because listen, I've seen Orange Cassidy since he was definitely not doing that gimmick, when he was doing the, quote unquote super indie gimmick. And he can wrestle. He can wrestle really well. But you know what got him over? That gimmick. That he has now morphed into another gimmick that is still getting him over. And that is how you get over,
Yeah.
in my opinion. And, the same thing could be said about a Matt Cardona. The same thing could be said, unfortunately for him, I think, to your point, the reason why he kind of got shuffled to the back burner at one point, juncture, is he came up in an era where the bosses didn't necessarily like you getting over when they didn't want you over.
Sure.
And that's, I think, what hurt him. But, when he's ready, I'm sure that the new boss has no problem with that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And that's and he's even made those comments that he's enjoying and making money on the indies right now. And one day he'll go back and it'll probably be okay for him, and that's just the way of the beast. And you just put the work in. But like I said, you forget about the guys who just do the moves, because it's like, hey, I can also watch Kenny Omega, and he does all the moves and he does them, but he also has a charisma about him. So what have I'd rather watch? This guy over here who's doing the same things just plainly, or a guy who's way more exciting like a Will Ospreay. And obviously you're going to pick Will Ospreay all day.
It's interesting to me, right? In the 80s, Hogan and Flair were everything to everybody.
Mhm.
And I feel like everybody took the wrong lessons, right? Like, people looked at Hogan and said, I got to lift more. But,
Mhm.
Hogan was an all-time promo. And if he wasn't, you know what I mean, he'd be the warlord.
Yeah.
And everybody looked at Flair and were like, oh, I got to I got to do 10 near falls in every match. But that's not what got Flair over. Flair got over with his character that was an all-time character, which has also been poorly copied on way too many occasions. But like, it's, it's obviously it's a lot easier to go to the gym and than it is, I think, sometimes to develop a main event level character that is going to get you places. That's not some cheap ripoff of somebody that came before or whatever.
Mhm.
So it's
Well,
it's interesting. Like I always say, like, you look at like Nakamura, right? He was Michael Jackson inspired,
Mhm.
but like Velveteen Dream was just wrestling dressed up like Prince, right? Like he just took, you know what I mean? He just put a suit on, and Nakamura basically allowed Michael Jackson's sort of whatever personality or style or whatever to influence him. And one felt authentic and one felt like a guy, to pull a Jim Cornette here, but cosplay wrestling.
mhm.
So I don't know. It's always interesting. I'm fascinated by wrestling. I'm fascinated by the decisions that people make. I will tell you, I've done probably 10 shows with Sting this year. And if I was a worker right now, and I would look at Sting at a show, I would make sure that I had white face paint as a gimmick. Because you can't, like, Sting looks like he looked like in 1997. I mean,
Mm.
he's got gray hair, but he blacks it, right? Like, so he looks close enough to what
Mhm.
he looked like to people. And some of these guys don't remotely look close to what they look like now. But,
Mm.
Sting looks 20, 30 years younger when he's got that face paint on. It's amazing.
Absolutely. And to think about with Flair, when you were talking about it's the little things, two of his biggest moves were a
The
front
flop.
bump and then the rocket launch.
Mhm.
And they weren't even
Mhm.
offensive moves, but he got him over.
I mean,
And
how
we
many matches did Foley win? And I mean, I was next to Mick Foley at GalaxyCon this year. He was at my New York Comic Con table. Like, he's as bulletproof of a guy as there ever was. Like
Mhm.
he just, I watch him do the same cons year after year after year, and his line never gets smaller. You know, there's always people coming. There's always people coming dressed up or whatever. And I mean, how many matches did he win versus what's his win loss record?
Oh yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But he told great stories, and he
Mhm.
had that connection because he was the person in the crowd. He
Mhm.
was that fan. And then it's funny because I do feel like ever since he did that, this is my dream thing, that became everybody's thing. Here's a video of me at a meet and greet when I was 12. Like, oh, okay, I get it, but whatever. But like, I mean, fully jumped off a roof,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Like he did it better. And like, if it's everybody's dream, it's nobody's dream, right? Like, and I think it's hard to look at somebody who's like just chiseled and ripped and whatever and think of them as an underdog. But like Mick was extremely relatable to wrestling fans because he looked like a wrestling fan.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? He's not like a fitness model or whatever. And all of that worked in his advantage. It's I don't know. It's everything is always fascinating to me. I just think it's such a fascinating subculture, and that's why like I love to write about it. And I think that's why like I try to root my stories in authentic scenarios and stuff.
You do amazing at it. I'm just going to throw that out there. And also Mick Foley, one of the nicest human beings on the planet.
Yes.
I've had many interactions, but it was fun when we stopped by to see you at New York Comic Con and we were waiting to speak with Vampiro. It's just one of those moments where he looks up from his line, he looks over at us, he goes, "Hey guys," and we're just like, "Hi, Mick," and that was just the interaction. And you don't get that from everybody, but that's just him.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Yeah, it's always fun to watch celebrities just in general, not just wrestlers, but celebrities with fans and who are very some people are just sign, sign, sign. Like John Cusack doesn't seem like he wants to be at Comic Con. He's
Mhm.
got dark glasses and a hat, and like he looks like he's about to star in Darkman or something,
Yeah.
and just whatever. And then you just have people. I mean, Danny Trejo was amazing with his fans. David Ramsey, who plays Diggle on Arrow, he stands on the other side of his table, like
Hmm.
on the people side. He doesn't stand behind his table. And like Kerry Payton does that too. King Ezekiel in The Walking Dead. Like it's just interesting to see everybody's different
Mhm.
vibes with people, and you know, it's one of the things that I love about doing cons is that like particularly like a show like New York Comic Con where you might not know that Mick Foley's there. You're going to New York Comic Con because it's New York Comic Con. You're coming down the aisle and you see him, and then all of a sudden that there's a connection there that maybe you haven't thought about in a long time, and you're like, oh my god, that's Mick Foley or that's Jerry Lawler, Booker T, and then you immediately you're like, oh, I'm getting a picture. You know what I mean? But like you didn't show up to get that picture,
Right.
but the minute you saw them, you had to have it, and it's just like it's such positivity. As much as wrestling can be so negative online and whatever, like just when you're at cons, it's all love, and I love to just I just love to be in it. I mean, I get a small fraction of that, right, from doing shows for years, and there's people who come to see, come to buy headlock stuff and whatever, but like it's 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 just nice to be just surrounded in it. At GalaxyCon, this guy came in full Jerry Lawler cosplay, like entirely full robe, crown, tights, boots, whatever. And like, I don't know, like, how can you not think that that's the best, man? The three of us took a picture together. And it's on my Instagram. You can see it. But I don't know. Like that's the beauty of wrestling, of comics. Like I don't know. I had a guy tell me that Headlock helped his son. He was having some like emotional problems, and like him sort of like just he was able to sort of calm down, and he was reading Headlocked and got really into it. So like you can't, I don't know, you can't trade that for anything.
No, absolutely not. I mean, it's the connections you make and the work, you never know who's going to hit and how it's going to make them feel. And your stuff is definitely winning over people left and right. And this book is going to be one that I think is going to bring a lot of enjoyment to fans. The Kickstarter is live right now. I mean, obviously, you're ending 2024 on a big note. You've alluded to a little bit of what's coming in 2025, but do you want to tell our audience about any projects we should be really on the lookout for in the upcoming year?
I definitely Tales from the Road Volume 4 and Headlock Volume 5. I'd like to get out. I mean, a lot of it is just it's what I can do, right? Like I had plans to have more out this year. Like this I was trying to run this in April. Um,
Oh wow.
and then we had, and then the WWE project kind of popped up, and then that got prioritized, and then that got squashed, and then my job had some things pop up. So like I'm just like I'm a guy I'm a multi-title publisher and I do everything but draw and letter. So I mean it's a crazy existence and there's not a lot of margin. So like if my job jumps out, like I might lose a couple weeks. I was supposed to be at WrestleCade this year and I had to cancel because my the customer that we work for demanded that I be on site. So
Mm.
this is what it is. So like I get done what I can get done. I work as hard as humanly possible, and we leave it all on the field, so to speak. But yeah, I really want to get Volume 5 for Headlock done. We might have a special guest star in that I think is going to really turn some heads. Going to try to go back and see if we can get that project that was squashed back out. There's just a lot going on. And then there's a lot of other potential things there's always just so many irons in the fire. And I don't know. I always tell people my style is I'm a monkey at the zoo and I'm flinging poop at everybody. And sooner or later, I'm going to get some in your mouth.
Fair enough. And this is going to be some project, like I say, if it's anything like Friday Night Bigfoot, fans are definitely going to be wanting to be in the crossfire, so to speak. So we can't thank you enough for coming through, Michael. In the liner notes of this episode is the link for the Kickstarter. We can't say this loudly enough. Share it everywhere and sign up for this campaign. It's going to be a book that you definitely don't want to miss out for. Michael, thank you again for coming on the show. We definitely have to talk to you soon.
Yeah, thank you so much, man. I always appreciate it. It's always a good time. And I will say we just passed 95%
All
while we
right.
were talking. So I'm excited for that. I'd really like to see this thing blow up in the last we got 9 days left, 8 days left. I'd really like to see it blow up. I just want to put as many books in people's hands as I can, and then we can get started on number 2 because it's a whole journey, and you're gonna want to take it.
Absolutely. So, on behalf of Rich and myself, we want to say thank you again for checking out another edition of Nerd Initiative's Variant Edition. And make sure to go out and get this book. We'll see you next time.